Hi, by the way, you're watching Hal Sparks Mega Worldwide. Like and subscribe. Give a thumbs up to the show. I mean, I confront some of these videos that other folks, I guess, on our side of things, just kind of shy away from or only play little bits of. And I have two problems with only showing little bits of these things, at least in the, at least making it available to watch long form, is that on the one hand, they can always make the case that you are cutting them out of context and using their words unfairly and describing their, their meanings, their ethics, their message in a way that is not in line with what actually happened. That's one. The other one is that there is a tacit assumption for whatever reason, and this applies largely to the Trump rallies more than almost any other thing, that if you pick out one crazy moment and show it, the assumption is that the rest of it somehow went on without a hitch or was somehow normal or healthy or functional. When in reality, one of the great things about showing the Trump rallies in full a lot of times is strictly speaking the fact that they're a mess from start to finish. That, yeah, there are blathery moments that are particularly galling or funny, but the rest of it's just kind of repetitive, dull, blathering bullshit. I'll give you a little taste of that right now before we're already out of time, but I will jump in here. This is Trump at the American Freedom Tour in Memphis. I think this was the day after the one we did on Friday. And again, this is just, I'm just doing a needle drop here because we hear this shit all the time. We've all heard this stuff. This is him at this, whatever, the American Freedom Tour. I mean, it's hard to even tell what these guys think freedom is.
It's very special. He ran great campaigns, and she loves this state.
He, she, whatever. I'm glad. Sorry, what was it again?
Thank you, Phil. Did a great job. Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. Delbert, thank you. Great job.
By the way, the hair is back to like circa 2015 craziness.
They like him.
They do. They like him. I say things in my observation like old people do. My grandfather, when we were driving around, would always call out gas prices and things that were on signs. Unleaded, $1.49, that kind of thing. Like he would go, 2 hamburgers, 99 cents. Like he would just start doing that near the end of when he was getting old. Trump does that a lot. He does a lot of like, I see it, I'm still here.
A friend of mine, somebody who's very special. He ran great campaigns.
A friend of mine, somebody who's very special. He ran great campaigns.
And she loves this.
And she loves. I mean, talk about, maybe there, is this Trump going woke?
State very, very much. Cindy Hyde-Smith.
He, she, Sydney Hyde-Smith. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde thing, but with gender.
Cindy, thank you. Thank you, Cindy, wherever you are. There she is. That's a good location. And the mayor of South Haven, Darren Musselwhite. Darren,
Bueller, Fry.
Thank you.
When Cameron was in Egypt's land, let my Cameron go.
Thank you, Darren, very much. Great to have you here. Thanks as well to each and every one of you for your unwavering devotion and all of the great things you've done to MAGA, Make America Great Again, the greatest movement in the history of our country.
Yes, the greatest movement. Fuck the Founding Fathers or the greatest generation fighting World War II or Freedom Riders or the civil rights movement, suffrage. Pfft. Nothing compares to a dwindling, flailing, violent subculture of right-wing thought.
We call it a common sense movement, right?
He's been throwing this in, the common sense idea, the idea that we just want simple things. And then the list gets really odd.
We want low taxes, we want security, we want strong military, we want all these things. We want to protect our Second Amendment, which, by the way, is under siege, as you probably know.
Yeah, blah, 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 blah.
All these things, he said, we want our freedom back. We want freedom of speech.
Yes, he said, I heard that guy say, we want our freedom back. We want our freedom of speech, says the man on a tour in front of a microphone that the government is not trying to stop at all.
All things, common sense. It's all common sense. We don't want crime in our cities. We want to be strong. We want to take care of our great law enforcement, policemen.
As opposed to the other kind of policeman.
Firemen. We want to take care of our people.
Our law enforcement firemen.
It's all common sense. You know what it's really? It's really called America First. That's what it's called. Maybe more than anything else.
More than MAGA, more than Save America, more than, it's like, I'm always shopping for the best phrase. Basically, why pay for focus groups when I can just focus group everything whenever I'm talking?
Together, we've already accomplished more than anyone thought possible. And you know what? We're just getting started.
Yes, everyone's amazed you became president. No, and no one's amazed that you were a one-termer.
This is just getting started.
It was just getting started. I'm revving it up. Here we go.
With your help, we passed the largest tax cuts and regulation cuts in American history. We achieved American energy independence and even dominance. We got gas down to $1.87
Yeah, and all it took was no one going anywhere.
a gallon.
Look at him. He's like, I got no credit for that. I mean, there was nowhere to drive to, but, you know, you could get there. You could get nowhere cheaply. So, shouldn't I?
Think of that.
Think of that, man. Ugh.
Remember I said gasoline's going to be $6, $7, $8, $9.
Yeah, it's almost as if you knew Putin was going to attack.
He said he doesn't know what he's talking about. Guess what? Take a look at what's happening today.
Guess
and
what?
It's going up a lot higher.
Actually, oil's coming down.
We created the greatest economy the world has ever seen. We had things going like nobody's ever seen.
And then you ignored the threat of COVID and the idea that a pandemic could hit, and you just blew it. You fucking blew it.
Then the plague came in from China.
Yes, and you delayed responding to it because you wanted to finish your China trade deal.
From China.
And then in the middle of it, while Americans were in food lines, you sold China the largest order of beef, pork, soybeans, and corn in our history that they are stockpiling, apparently, so that they can attack Taiwan now. That's the idea. By the way, they're not. All that grain has already rotted or been eaten.
And then we did it again, and we handed it off. We had a bad election. We had a rigged and stolen election.
He's got to throw that in for legal reasons.
We handed it off. We handed it off to this group, and they rode our coattails for a year and a half, and now...
Yeah, that's what they did. They rode your coattails out of Afghanistan, where you were going to stay forever, and right into Infrastructure Week. Right, rode his coattails right out of Infrastructure Week.
You see, it's all coming down. Took a little while. You know, it doesn't just happen overnight. It's all coming down.
Oh, so you're saying like the trend up in the beginning of your presidency was left over from the Obama years? Is that what you're saying, till the policy kicks in?
We did it with no inflation and low interest rates. We created 7 million.
Dude wanted negative interest rates with the Fed. Like, he was trying to muscle Powell into going negative, literally, where we would spend money to print money.
Million new jobs, a record. We had our record, 164 million people working.
And then a bunch of them died.
Far more than we have today. We achieved the
Yeah, well, wages have gone up, so not everybody has to work as much as they used to.
Largest poverty reduction in 50 years. We lifted 7 million people off of food stamps.
Kicked, but sure.
We lifted 10 million people out of welfare. Think of that, 10 million people.
Or they did it themselves. I mean, again, I guess government is responsible for human beings' success.
We rebuilt entirely. It was a mess. Unfortunately, they gave 85 billion of it away to the Taliban. We rebuilt.
No, they didn't.
The United States military, modernized our nuclear forces. We have the strongest most powerful nuclear. We had weapons that were 45 years old. We didn't even know if they worked. Hope to God we never have to use them. But with what's going on right now and with the way our people are leading this country, you could end up in a World War III. Don't kid yourself. We created...
Oh, so do we get points if we don't end up in World War III, at least it being a nuclear hot war? I would argue this is World War III, but it's because the world is engaged in it, it's a war. But that it's not a nuclear war. Do we get to hang this over him like the whole, like Obama told me that we were going to have a nuclear war with Korea but we didn't have one?
Did something very important. Space Force, first time in 78 years since Air Force.
It's Ass Force, by the way.
We built almost all of the border wall, hundreds and hundreds.
We built almost all of the border wall. You mean the 47 miles of it?
Hundreds of miles, including substantial additions that...
Substantial, 47. Actually, it might be less than that. Hold on one second. Let me see. Let's see. Let's see if I can open this guy up right here. Yeah, here you go. Find this right here. There you go. This is the how much wall? New primary wall in place of dilapidated or outdated designs. Primary wall and secondary wall. 351 miles and 22 miles. They basically rebuild it. Again, taking fencing and putting wall where it was, or just repairing. This is a constant part of it. A lot of it was money allocated during the Obama years anyways. New primary wall in locations where no barriers previously existed. 738 miles of it was funded. So they funded 281 miles of it. They completed 47 miles. New secondary wall. They completed 33 miles. Let's see, 40 miles of new primary and, there you go, 40 miles of new primary and secondary border wall system in place of dilapidated and outdated signs in the San Diego, El Centro, and El Paso sectors. 49 million for 34 border wall gates in the RGV sector. Okay, 10 gates are complete. So there's 24 gates that weren't done. Let's see, 1.3 billion for 78 miles, not 1.9 billion for 85 miles. For 2019, this is 2018, 2019. I mean, this is all repair money that's always ongoing. CBP's fiscal year 2020 funding includes 1.3 for 69 miles of new primary border wall system in a location where no barriers currently existed within Webb and Zapata counties in the Laredo sector. Panels are anticipated to begin in early 2021, assuming real estate is cleared, meaning they either buy the land or use eminent domain to claim it from Americans. And again, Donald Trump is the first president since I believe the Mexican-American War to preside over Mexico getting American ground. He split private land with one of his wall sections and gave a chunk of land to Mexico. Yeah, he didn't go completely around the American property. He went right in the middle of it, meaning that the wall is the separating point. That is now Mexican land. Congratulations, Mexico. Enjoy your new little slivers of land that Trump gave you.
We never even planned to build. We got it finished. And 3 weeks of work, they would have completed the additions. And
the additions. The other gates, you mean?
They didn't want to do that. Can you believe it? We stood up to Iran, Russia, China like no president in history. We just...
we let them start building nuclear, weapons again.
Destroyed the ISIS territorial caliphate one.
Yeah, you just spread them out all over. ISIS-K, of course, was who killed our soldiers in Afghanistan. Clearly not wiped out.
100% destroyed. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, as a caliphate, except for the ones that are still there.
And we even created the Abraham Accords. We even created peace in the Middle East.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you know it, but the Middle East is completely at peace right now. Of course, FIFA did the exact same thing because it's just countries that aren't at war with Israel.
Think of it. Nothing's happened since we started the Abraham Accords.
No, nothing's happened. I mean, basically, Saudi Arabia and Yemen aren't fighting. The Syrians aren't. Jesus Christ. I gotta find the page on this one. Hold on. Let's see. 1 second. There's so much of it. There you go. Let's see. This is the current state of things. Sudan coup between structural violence and uncertainty. Humiliating plea. Biden criticized for asking Israel to avoid civilian casualties, I'm guessing. How now this became the hub for Israeli settler violence. The Middle East next conflict is likely lurking in the water. The Christian East is bigger than you know and worth... Okay, Israeli mainly to blame for Palestine conflict, says UN report. Ukraine war is changing people's attitudes towards refugees. That's because they're going to go back as soon as there's a difference in resettlement refugees versus temporary refugees. This is the target assassination. This idea that they the Israeli soldiers killed this Al Jazeera reporter. Understanding global political violence and to resolve the conflict. Management top envoy. Israeli police training reduced from 7 months to 7 weeks. Other people's mail. Blah blah. UN warns of wider conflict in the Middle East. This is 6 days ago. Let's see. What is the UN worried about? I mean, it's obviously there's peace in the Middle East, so it's obviously garbage. Broader conflict in the Middle East. Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, expressed his alarm at an escalation in violence and hostile rhetoric across the region in recent weeks against the backdrop of reports of bombing of the airport of the Syrian capital of Damascus. According to Stephanie Dujarric, a UN spokesman, the Secretary General warned of the dangers of miscalculation could lead to a broader conflict in an already volatile region. Guterres added, according to the statement by the United Nations spokesman Stephanie Dujarric, that direct attacks against civilians and civilian facilities is strictly prohibited under international humanitarian law. He called on all parties to exercise maximum restraint to avoid further escalation. I mean, it's peace. I mean, it might as well be peace.
People thought it was a modern day miracle.
No, they didn't.
But they have
again, that there are going to be commercial flights between Israel and the UAE.
Been taken the leadership that was necessary to add another 10 countries. You could have added them very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, the rest of the countries, we did the hard part, the 3 countries that weren't in active war with Israel and didn't really give a shit because we promised them $50 billion in military aid, more than we're giving Ukraine, by the way, currently. We offered Qatar and these other countries $50 billion apiece to be friendly with Israel. Meanwhile, arming them so that at any point they're like, you know what, fuck it. They've got all the weapons they would need to end Israel.
We're waiting online. Under our leadership,
they're waiting online.
The border was
now serving D41. Hello. There's a ticking. I don't know. Do I have time?
Secure. Our communities were safe. Our country was strong.
Our communities were safe, especially during the summer of 2020.
And the world was calm, despite the fact that every day I had a new witch hunt started against me. And
the world was calm, wasn't it, though?
America was respected like it was never respected before.
Again. Fuck you, greatest generation. Fuck you, World War II winning generation.
We were respected as a country. But in just 17 months, Joe Biden...
But, by the way, this asshole thinks he was more important than... I mean, never mind the fact, of what Democrats have accomplished. Period. But Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. That part. Trump thinks his 4 years were more important than that moment.
Biden and the radical left have turned calm into chaos. prosperity into poverty, and security into a total catastrophe.
You could stay with the alliteration?
The election was a horrible thing that took place. A horrible thing.
Horrible.
You see it. Everybody sees it. It's out there. It's out there to look at. And we can never let this happen again. And we have to continue to look. We have so much proof. You ever see where they say the big lie?
This is true.
That was no lie.
I like this guy. You have to listen to this. The part of the real guy. Leave this guy alone, okay? What I'm saying.
Lie was what they were doing. That was the big.
That's right. There's a lie inside the lie. This is what we do in the old KGB days. You'd wrap the lie inside another lie, interwoven with several lies, and also in phyllo dough and dipped in baba ganoush. It's lovely.
Lie.
Here's yes.
And in fact.
By the way, do you like my long, luscious hair now? I've been growing my hair and fingernails. I have gone full Howard Hughes. I am drinking my own urine out of masonry jars. But don't worry, I'm completely sane and they've taken the button away from me.
Big story from 2 days ago that CNN
huge
has put a clamp.
A clamp. Clamp, sponge. They put the clamp. They put a cock ring on the phrase.
On ever using the term the big lie, because I think they're worried about the legal liability.
Oh, you mean the part where the guy said he prefers Trump lie? I mean, you should appreciate the power of branding, my friend.
Of using that term, because I think they realize it wasn't a big lie.
Yes, that's why. That's why they want to call it Trump lie. Or Trump's election lie. Big lie is too broad.
They're not allowed to use the term the big lie.
Actually, they are. I mean, I tried. But you don't have the same control in U.S. as I have on... Like if I tell my press, you cannot say war. You can only call it special military operation. I'm sorry, I can't even say it without. I honest to God, I start giggle and I fart a little bit. I'm so excited.
On fake news CNN anymore, which is it's a reason.
It's a reason. Yes. Do you smell almonds, my friend?
And under this leadership, our country is being destroyed.
That's just weird. It's being destroyed. Destroyed.
Joe Biden is the worst president in the history of our country. He is now...
It's amazing that the worst president in our history managed to get infrastructure done. What does that mean to you? Look at this dude. You have to understand, and again, don't let this guy get you riled up. Because look how miserable this fucker is. This doesn't feel good for him to say. Like, he's not spiking the ball. Like, this dude is broke and fucked. Look at his face. Every time he brings up Biden, brings up the election, says this rigged bullshit, he knows he's covering his ass legally. He doesn't buy it for a fucking second. But also, he's miserable. He does that big, like, mouth breathing thing that he does. Shit.
Now turning out to be a combination of Jimmy Carter,
who's a great man and a good and decent fellow,
and Herbert Hoover. Has anyone looked at the stock market?
Well, let's look at the stock market. Hold on one second. It's good. Stock market. Let's see, where's our... Let me go to the NASDAQ. Yeah, there we go. What the Dow? What the heck? Dividends. No, that's not good. It looks terrible. Hold on, that's the NASDAQ. It's up. Hold on. Yes, I I would like to, if I may, Your Honor, may I present the stock market? This is the current state of the stock market. This is Trump years. There you go, Trump years. And then this is the Trump years, and this giant take a shit. And then we go ruffling back to basically even, and then Biden takes over, and frow. Right now it's at like 30, 29, something like that. Yeah, 30, 68. It's like it'll drop below 30 because they're trying to correct it to get back. They want on this trajectory, like right about here. This spike, everything was overvalued anyway, so the Fed is trying to keep it like here, this kind of deal. And again, the stock market doesn't track to its actual worth. But this is where's 12/9/2020? Let's see, here's the boink. This is November 4th, 2020. This is when the election happened. 27/847. And right now it's up to like, there you go, like 3K. There you go. And obviously spiked way up here in January. It was at 36. Do you anybody want to go back and look at all the 2019 due for a correction conversations? Let's see, 2019. Hold on, I gotta put this in here. Let's do 2018. Stocks due for correction. Here's Trump in office. You want to just compare U.S. stocks post worst year in a decade after the S&P falls more than 6% in 2018. Look at this dude. He's having a rough morning. Stocks had a rough 2018. Here's what 5 strategists say to expect in 2019. Wall Street concluded a tumultuous 2018 on Monday as the major stock indexes posted their worst yearly performances since the financial crisis. After solid gains on Monday, the Dow Industrial Average went down 6.2% and 5.6% respectively. I guess the NASDAQ is meant to be there. For 2018, both indexes logged their biggest annual losses since 2008, when they plunged 38.5% and 33.8% respectively in 2008. By the way, look at where they are now, even with that crash. Just saying. The NASDAQ composite lost 3.9% in 2018, its worst year in a decade when it dropped 40%. The S&P, so the last worst thing was, there you go. And this is before COVID. Yeah. So basically every 2 years of the Trump administration, the stocks took a shit. Remember how great it was? We had the greatest ever. And they rode our coattails for the first year. That would be 2017 for him. And then once their policies kicked in, everything, you can see what they're really all about. Meanwhile, 2018...
Anybody looked at the stock market lately?
Yes, it's still up over where it was when you left office, even in spite of all the challenges.
Like most of the people in the room. Biden's disasters are...
His disasters?
Too numerous to even count.
Just give us a fire away. Let's hear it. Biden's disasters. Line them up.
Inflation is the highest in nearly half a century. And
inflation is highest in nearly half a century. Inflation. Okay. Let's see. Hold on. Let me see what let's go with news. Fed hikes rates by most in nearly 30 years while raising inflation forecasts and lowering economic growth estimates. Fed sees inflation topping 5% in 2022 and then falling. Oh, here you go. This is what the Fed is trying to do without you in office. Fed sees inflation topping 5% in 2022 and then falling rapidly due to higher rates. Also, because they think it's largely based on monetary policy, and it ain't. It's also going to fuck with liquidity. Unemployment expected to rise in the U.S. economy is slow due to higher rates. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday predicted U.S. inflation would exceed 5% by the end of 2022, much higher than its most recent forecast, underscoring its more aggressive strategy in raising rates. They went 75 basis points, 0.75%, to a range of 1.5 to 1.75. It marks the biggest rate increase in 28 years. Again, the Fed rate is at 1.75%. Is that not pathetically small? What was the Fed? I want to see real quick. What was the Fed rate? In 1978. Yeah, there you go. The Fed raised federal fund rates from 6.9% in 1978 to 10% by the end of the year. And can I point out here? See this little phrase right here? Hold on, shit. I gotta bring this page down off of here and move it over. Oil shock of 1978-79. Does that say monetary policy shock? Did the Fed raise rates from 6.9% to 10% in a year, which triggered a recession, as we know? What caused that? Remember when I was saying every time you find inflation, every time you find like the Fed responding to inflation with a raising of rates, what preceded it every fucking time? A spike in oil prices. Every fucking time. At least in the last 70 years. Oil shock, 1978 to 79. By the way, like and subscribe. This is Hal Sparks Mega Worldwide. I know I'm getting into the deep reads and I'm going over time. I'll stop. I'm not going to do the whole Trump thing tonight. But I think this is a good way to end it. A lot of people will talk about inflation caused by monetary policy. There's too much liquidity, too much money in the system, and therefore Americans are willing to spend too much on items, and therefore stores are racing to gather up that profit of those extra dollars floating around. Nobody thinks that's the case right now. The idea that there's too much money floating around, and you might have been able to make that argument when UI was still going in the end, like in late 2020, early 2021, that there was so much money floating around in the system, sitting there that, that stores were like, I can grab a little bit of this because this is going to go away soon. So I want to get these UI dollars quickly. So they jacked up prices in the prospect. Had nothing to do with that. The supply shock. What's the biggest driver of the inflation cost right now? Primarily energy. Why? Because oil prices have climbed like crazy. Why? Because they took a shit in 2020 and the companies are trying to make up for that profit. You could say it's price gouging or whatever, but if you even it out between what people were paying when they couldn't go anywhere or what the price was when it dropped off to literally where they were paying people $30 a barrel to just take it off their hands. Here, I'll give you $30 if you just fucking take this barrel of oil away from me because you have to keep the pipes flowing. If it gets backed up and we run out of storage, we're fucked. Can't just shut it off like a spigot and then turn it back on. It doesn't work that way. And like its 73-74 predecessor, the second oil shock of the 70s was associated with events in the Middle East. Here you go, ladies and gentlemen. The primary reason why, by the way, as we continue to have demand destruction for oil in the United States, both by producing more of our own and driving down demand in consumer cars specifically, that process is making the Middle East less important to us. It's partly why we're moving away from that entire region, why we're caring less about it, with the exception of sprawling security concerns. Back then, this is when all these decisions were made. This is what, when everybody's like, we were fucking around with Iran, we were fucking around with Iraq, all these war for oil. This is Americans at that time. When these decisions are being made, this is what's happening to the American economy, grinding to a fucking halt. And the OPEC nations knew that they could affect us politically. They could change the sitting president just by tightening the spigot or opening it up. It became in the national security of interests of the United States of America to stop using this kind of fuel for commuter cars. That alone would do it. If we just have commuter cars, either hybrids where they cut the amount of oil and gas they used in half, or we shift entirely to electric where they use none and you can use the grid to get it, where you have a myriad of ways that you can produce it, either through gas power plants, coal power plants, or nuclear power plants, where the spread of that is much better for the environment, even when it's centrally located in power plants, than in all these cars puking this shit out and on every block and every street corner in America. If anybody remembers what cars in the late 70s used to be like as far as smog, holy shit. But you could undermine the American economy. You could control politicians and the direction of American policy just by turning that spigot. And you still can to some degree, because all along the way, Republicans have been fighting us getting off the oil tit every chance they get, because they see it undermining the economic strength of Texas specifically, because that's where they make most of they're in that game, and therefore that's the primary thing. There is not a lot of like industrial or like chemical and technological advances coming out of Texas. It's largely oil and trade based, Gulf based transport and Mexican, American business transactions, and largely oil and gas, right? And now new fracking, which is why like there's earthquakes all over the fucking place. Which I personally believe that this is what you get for letting Californians move in. Here you go. Let's see. Here you go. Earthquakes in Texas doubled in 2021. Scientists cite years of oil companies injecting sludgy water underground. Derp. All right. So every time you look at a major inflation jack in this country, it is always preceded by oil shock of one form or another. Every fucking time. And this time and 2008 are no different. Like its 1973-74 predecessor, the second oil shock of the 70s was associated with events in the Middle East, but it was also driven by strong global oil demand. The Iranian Revolution began in early 1978 and ended a year later when the royal reign of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi collapsed and Sheikh Khamenei took control as Grand Ayatollah of the Islamic Republic. In conjunction with the revolution, Iranian oil output declined by 4.8 million barrels per day. That's almost exactly the amount of oil per day that has stopped because of the Russian war. They're at 5 million barrels a day. It's like the same fucking number. More than... Oil prices began to rise rapidly in mid-1979, more than doubling between April 1979 and 1980. That's exactly what happened 21 to 22, almost doubling. According to one estimate, surging oil demand coming from both booming global economy and a sharp increase in precautionary demand was responsible for much of the increase in the cost of oil during the crisis. You're buying because there was a shortage. The United States overbought. This is before we had an output of our own. Through early 1978, the Federal Reserve had maintained a highly accommodative stance on monetary policy, hoping to combat rising unemployment. Ultimately, though, the policy showed little success in stifling the deterioration in the unemployment rate and likely fostered an environment that allowed the rising energy prices to be transmitted into more general inflation. That's because they have no control over the spigot. The Fed has no control over supply. In a supply and demand equation, the Fed has no part in any of it. The only thing they can limit is, and watch, they'll raise the price of this. It will cause the cost of borrowing money to go up. And when oil companies who haven't yet recovered from 2020, who are trying to do more exploration, open more wells and all that kind of shit, because right now they are opening more wells. And I know I'm going to get on another tear, but unfinished wells priority oil. Let's see if we get this. Let's see, news. Yikes, that's funny. Hold on. Like a new tab. I literally was watching this. It might be, there's a 6.0 earthquake off the Taiwan coast yesterday. Oh, the Chinese had one of their subs exploded. I'm kidding. Let's see. Well, priority oil price. Let's see. Where are these? Natural gas. I don't. Okay, this is way overseas. Okay, this is other stuff. It's going to be on Bloomberg. I have to find it. Son of a bitch. This is this is what happens. All right, here we go. Sign in. There you go. Shit. Come on. Hold on. Here we go. I'm searching for something. Give me 1 second. Wells unfinished. I think it's in here. Industrial capital spending. Okay, this might be in this thing. Whoops, get out of here. Newsletter. 5 things to start your day. It might be in this piece. So forgive me if it's not. This is it. The Fengxia and Mingchuan Navy frigates, a ceremony commission of the 2 Perry-class guided missile ships from the U.S. into Taiwan Navy. Okay, there we go. U.S. rejects China's declaration of the Taiwan Strait. Long-term crypto investors are bailing out. Hong Kong lawyers are cracking down larger. Here's what you need to know. Dire Strait, panic stations, crypto market crumbling, one-way trip, inflation woes, stocks sentiment markets remain fragile. Under a Federal Reserve determined to tame inflation, equity futures rose for Japan but dipped for Australia, Hong Kong, while S&P NASDAQ contracts edged up in early Asian trading. Volatility is likely to continue to whipsaw markets as inflation remains elevated and investors fret that assets have further to decline. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said unacceptably high prices are likely to stick with the consumers through 2022, which expects the U.S. economy to slow down. Rule of law, Huge oil refining capacity sits idle in China even as prices soar. That's not a mistake. While the love adults who love toys, Macron set to lose after a big rail strike. Opinion quietly delivering on his bipartisan promise. Garfield's interest today. Where's the bottom? They're looking at the stocks. Son of a bitch. Okay, earlier today I was looking at a Bloomberg thing. I'll post it later on. My bad. But basically, oil companies are instead of investing in new wells, they are finishing unfinished wells, and that process is quicker and will get things more online faster, but it will get it back up to standard. That we're shy of like maybe 300,000 barrels a day, shy of full American production from where we were in 2018, for example. That's that we're still edging towards that, and it'll take new wells to get beyond that and get us up on the arc that we were on. I will find that article later because it's buried. So there you go. Carter administration's decision to appoint Paul Volcker as Fed chairman in August 79 was a strong endorsement of using more aggressive monetary policy. The Volcker myth is the idea that monetary policy is what caused this inflation. It's always been bullshit. It's continually bullshit. And arguably, Powell is trying to be Volcker too. They're all buying the same Volcker idea. Though the Fed's resolve under Volcker was effective in reducing inflation, the monetary contraction combined with the impact from the oil price shock pushed the economy into the most severe recession since the Great Depression and spurred strong popular opposition. Yeah, because they didn't have anything to do with the actual inflation numbers. It was all because of the cost of oil. And they have no effect on that. So what they did was they fucked every other aspect of prices. Anyway, but go find me an inflation spike that was, genuinely felt and was part of the conversation, not like some variant. Go find me a specific moment in American history that was we had inflation pressure or a recession pop up where the Fed had to drive us into a recession to tame inflation that wasn't preceded by an oil shock. You won't find it. And on that note, grumble, grumble. I will see you guys tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow I don't have a morning show, but I will be up and live tweeting the congressional January 6th committee's hearings and watching those, and as I'm sure many of you will, and we'll address some of the things that came up at the beginning of tomorrow's show, and then we'll get into our our response clips where you'll see more and more freak out coming. And Trump is becoming increasingly a sweaty mess about a lot of this shit, and is effectively finding himself in a position where he has to clamor about this stuff to protect himself because the day is coming. Whether it's Georgia, whether it's his financial woes in New York, whether it's actually the DOJ getting a referral rather from the January 6th committee that puts him in legal jeopardy, one of those is coming home to roost. And since he's fighting on all three, his lawyers are apparently doing triple duty on all of them.